of 23% effectiveness. So 75% of the change happens because of things that take place in the life of people outside of counseling. 25% because of what actually happens in counseling. 13% of the 25 is accounted for by the method you use. But the thing that counts the most is what they call common elements. And these are found amongst all different methods. And definitely the main vehicle of effectiveness is the relationship with the counselor. So if you're a counselor, you're counseling a youth, that's what I mean. I don't mean it in a formal way only. I mean it in general. The one thing that's going to make whatever you tell them effective is the relationship that you have with. So they call it therapeutic, or they call it the alliance, therapeutic alliance or the alliance. So if you have a good, strong relationship, you can really influence the life of youth. So today we'll speak of a general model, then we'll talk about some cases today. We'll do the case study for substance abuse, but this one you'd require to take some notes. This you would have a copy of. So you can think of the counseling model as going through phases. So see my notes. The first phase is what we call the initial phase or initiating phase or connect phase. And connect is probably the best descriptive to the first phase because initially you're not solving anyone's problem. Initially, you're not dealing here with a crisis, but initially what you're doing is you're making a connection with the youth that you are about to counsel. In that connection, in every phase, I'll give you like an acronym, something to help you remember the main points of that phase. So the acronym for this phase is solvers. Solvers. Each letter stands for something. Oh, you mean? Sorry. So the S stands for squarely. The O stands for openly. You get it? So it's solvers is like the acronym to remind you, what is it that I need to focus on when it comes to the connect phase as I sit down with the youth. Always remember this. Don't jump to solving issues. Learn to ask a lot of good questions, but mostly learn to connect with the youth who's about to open up, because they won't open up unless they connect. Unless they feel safe with you, they feel they can trust you, they feel that they feel comfortable. Something about your encounter with them will either make them comfortable or uncomfortable. If they feel uncomfortable, they're going to be closed off. If they feel that they can trust you and then they feel like you have a calming voice, you have an interest in them, you speak to them in a calm voice and a calm tone, they'll open up. So initial phase is the connect phase. Solvers, which means you have to look at them squarely. And I'm talking here about the general culture of our youth is a Western culture. People don't like that in some other cultures, looking at someone straight is not appropriate. It can be misunderstood. But in the Western culture, you've got to look at the person in the eye. So look at them straight, that's squarely. Squarely means if they're sitting with you like this, then you're sitting like this. That's squarely, not like this. Okay, so you had to look at them, look at their eyes, make eye contact, and openly. You will notice this. If you ask the youth, for example, something about their deep feelings, or you tell them something that you know they won't accept so easily, you'll find they'll go like this. They'll close their arms. Like, it's an involuntary movement when the person doesn't feel comfortable. So in order to be open with them, make sure your hands are down. Make sure you're open to them. Sometimes it's good also to mirror them. So if you're sitting and your legs are crossed this way, their legs are crossed this way. They uncross their legs, you uncross your leg. These things are psychologically very effective when it comes to connecting in the initial phase. Leaning forward. So versus sitting back like this, no, lean forward, show interest. Leaning forward says to the person, I want to listen to you. I want to hear what you have to say. Your verbal tone can be supportive, such as saying, uh-huh, yep, mm-hmm, tell me more. Oh, really? Hmm. So even just the simple when they say something that is painful, oh, this is hard. Obviously, I'm adding words here, but just the tone of voice. When someone comes to you and they're probably very anxious, say, okay, help me understand. You see how my voice went down? Help me understand what's going on. So make sure your tone of voice, again, is very supportive. Eye contact, the R is for relaxed. So a lot of the youth, when they come to you, they won't be relaxed. They'll be very tense, and they will mirror your posture. They mirror your the tone in your body. So make sure you're relaxed and you are also using silence. So sometimes we don't like silence. We sit with someone and then you say, so what do you think about this? And they are, I don't know. And we're too quick to say, so do you think it's this? Do you think it's that? You don't have to do that. Sometimes you have to be just quiet and say, hmm. And then the silence, they say you usually give up to 29 seconds of silence. That's a long time. You cannot do it every single time, but sometimes when you know the person can say something, or if they were to reflect a little bit, they'll tell you something important, just sit quietly. Yeah, and they're most likely going to say something. If they don't, they say, is it hard for you to tell me how you're feeling about this? So again, it's a question. You ask a question. So that's the initial phase, solvers. The second phase is collecting. So once you've made that connection, you start collecting. And the acronym is biospheres. Biospheres. What are you asking? You are collecting behavioral data. So um, so when your friends started fighting with you, what did you do? What did you do is a behavioral question. So you want to know. So when your parents, you say you've had these fights with your parents regularly. When how do they start? Well, my mom, she gets very anxious and she yells at me, and then my dad starts yelling at me and say, "Oh, okay." And so when that happens and they start yelling at you, what do you do? That's a behavioral question. So that's the B of biosphere. Then you want to ask question about intellectual meaning thoughts. So when your friend texted this about you and you felt like they were exposing you, what were you thinking? When you did this on Instagram and made fun of the picture that you had of them, or that you disclosed something that they told you in secret. What were you thinking? So here is an intellectual question or intellectual collection of data. Then organizational. Help them understand how do they organize their stories or their thoughts. What kind of so what happened before this, and when that happened, what happened after, and who said this after you made that comment. So you help to understand what's going on, and sometimes you begin to discover a cycle. This becomes important when you come to solve later, because if there is a cycle, also when someone um, um, exposes you, or when someone they disses you or says something that is not that you consider not good, what do you begin to think? Well, this how do you how what did you do? I did that. And after you did that, what happened? So again, you begin to see if there is a cycle or a pattern. Spiritual questions. So um, how do you connect this to your faith? What did your father of confession say about this? You feel like there is a spiritual part of this that you want us to talk about. So you ask about spirituality. You also ask about physical. So sometimes, especially with girls, they are very much in touch with their body. So they can tell you right away, I felt awful and it felt like a punch in my stomach. So this becomes important because it could help them identify their trigger next time. Because usually a person feels things somatically in their body before they they can feel it in their minds. So this is again about being mindful. You can ask, that's a collecting question. Historical. Has this happened before? Oh yeah, it happened a couple of years ago with the same person when I was in grade 8. Oh, okay. What happened then? Who did what then? Why did you get upset back then? Is it the same as today? So then there is historical collection. Emotional, again, what are your feelings? And a lot of times when you say to someone, "Well, how do you feel about this?" He said, "Well, I think it's not a good thing." They answer with a thinking answer, not a feeling answer. You say, "How did you feel about this?" And say, "Well, I think it's not appropriate." It's not easy for people to talk about their feelings because feelings are windows into vulnerabilities. So again, you're connecting, you're opening up, but when you touch on feelings, you got to be very patient. And you could ask the question in a different way. Say, I know it's a little bit hard to talk about your feelings, but would you say you felt happy, sad? So you have to have some vocab for feelings. Did you feel happy, sad, scared, worried, frustrated, disappointed, hurt, confused? So you're gonna have to help them a little bit with picking some feelings. And on the internet, you can get something called the Wheel of Feelings. That's a very helpful tool. It's called the Wheel of Feelings or the Feeling Wheel. Relational. So tell me a little bit about your group of friends. How are you guys like relationship wise? Like, are you close? Are you not so close? Who's the closest to you in that group of friends? At home, when your siblings said that, how is your relationship with them anyways? Has it been okay? And so obviously I'm alternating between open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. As much as you can, ask open-ended questions. But if you feel like you're getting nowhere, or that you would like to focus the conversation, ask a close-ended question. But usually better to say, ask the how, the what, the where, the who, and sometimes the why, but preferably not the why. Why makes a person feel like they're on the defense stand? Why did you react this way? It's almost like I gotta defend myself. And ask it with the what. Help me understand what led you act this way. It's just softer on the psyche of the person. What led you to do this? It's almost something else is to be blamed. Environmental. Where were you when this happened? What was happening at school? What was going on in your class? So environmental. Uh, it could be as simple as how was the weather that day? Some people, their emotions, they get impacted by a weather like this, for example. You know, sensual. So sensual in the sense of how did it feel physically? Again, it's connected a little bit to the physical questions, but this is more. Um, uh, it could be a deeper sense than just physical. So deeper inside of you, how did you sense this? How did you feel that? How do you encounter this? Phase 3, so first you initiate by connecting, solvers. Then you move into collecting biospheres. Then you move into the third phase, which is check-in phase. Now you're checking in what's actually going on. What is happening? So is your problem with your family, or is your problem with the way you see yourself? So now you're checking. You have some hypothesis in mind as to what this could be caused by. So somebody is coming to you and they're very distraught, very upset, very angry. and very hurt and crying because their friends made fun of them, have been making fun of them. Um, and so you want to check. So what? A lot of people can be made fun of. What makes this person so hurt? So there is generally, I understand someone will be upset, but what's making that person thinking of suicide? What's making that person cry and doesn't want to come to church anymore? What's making that person hate their servants when the servant has done nothing? So you want to check. So help me understand, was this more about your reputation among your friends, or was it more about the words that were said were actually hurtful to you? So sometimes you ask, is it this or that? And this can open up more the discussion and can help you pinpoint what's happening. You're testing hypotheses, right? This is what you're doing here. You have a hunch as to maybe what's going on, but you're not sure. So you're testing. Also checking to see what's happening when you ask the question. So do they get agitated? Do they open up more? Do they begin to say, oh, I never thought of it this way? And maybe there is almost like what we call an aha moment, like something they didn't realize before. You're also actively listening. Actively listening is about completely suspending your thoughts aside at, at the moment when the other person, the youth, is talking. So you're fully listening to what they're saying, and then you paraphrase it. That's part of the active listening. You fully suspend your thoughts, listen, and then paraphrase what they said and check. And then now you have a chance to bring in what you wanted to say and communicate that. But that's active listening is very important all throughout the counseling, especially at this phase. So from connecting, we said, to collecting, to checking, and now we're into the fourth phase, which is creative phase. The creative phase is doing something creative to intervene or interfere. So, like I said, here, the aha moments from phase three, the new insights, you begin to explore them. Say, oh, so when I asked you this question, it seemed like a light bulb went on in your head. Can you help me understand what's that? And they say, well, I really never thought that what bothers me the most is the fact that I'm jealous from this girl. I'm just jealous all the time. I always thought it's just she's just not a nice person and I hate her. But now that we talked about this, I think I'm jealous. I think there's a lot of jealousy in my heart, and I envy that person because I say, oh, okay, well, what's that new insight about? What do you think it's telling you? So you become creative. Like an insight doesn't speak, but you become creative. What is it telling you? You almost give it voice. You begin to reflect, reverse, and review. So reflect on what the teen is saying, reverse what is being said. So reverse it as in put it back to them. Let them review it again. So one is you reflect on it, then you put it out there, let them reflect on it, and then review what you've done. This is all in the creative phase. Uh, so reverse also includes, as I said, reflection. How can you help a teen reflect? They're stuck with their own perspective. They only see that everybody else was against them. My parents hate me. My younger sibling, she always takes that opportunity to show off how amazing she is and how awful I am. They see it only from one perspective. Say, oh, so if I were to invite your sister here and ask her, what went on, what would she say? So here I'm introducing someone else's voice. If I were to speak to your teacher, hypothetically, I'm not going to do that, but if I were and asked about what they saw your behavior looked like, what would they say? And then the person would say, well, they probably think that I was very aggressive or that I was, rude. Oh, whereas if you were to only ask them, they'll never say I was rude or hardly say that I was rude. But it's good to kind of help the person reflect by introducing different perspectives. And sometimes you do this through the exercise um, of letting different things speak to one another. So the part of you, the part inside of you that hates coming to church, if we can get, you've come to church before, so that I would assume there is another part that tells you to come to church. If we were to get that part that wants you to come to church to speak to the part that doesn't want you to come to church, what would that part say? Creative. And at the same time, you get different perspectives. Most of the problems of teens, they happen because they're fixated. They just see it from their own eyes, period. Actually, I would say that for most of us, but for teens specifically, it's very hard for them to see it except from their perspective. Until you slow them down and help them see it, oh, you know what? There are other thoughts around this, other perspectives in here. And that could be the initiation of intervention and change. Um, Also, this teen is vaping. Um, and you're all wondering, this is bad. This is very bad. They're very young. They're vaping nicotine, glycerine, God knows what else they are vaping. And you're like, this is not good. You got to stop this. And they're not stopping. There's a very important question. It's basic, is how is the problem serving the system? So assuming that the teen is not crazy, not diagnosed with any mental health illness or anything, no personality disorders, nothing. Why are they doing this? It must be doing something for them, right? So this is the question: is how is the problem serving the system? Why does this teen specifically rebel against their parents? It's causing them trouble. They get their phone taken away from them. They can do this, they can, but they still misbehave. Well, maybe the misbehavior is giving them a kick somehow. You never know. So it's very important that we ask that question in our own minds. How is the problem being self-sustained? What's getting this problem, what's making it happening? How is the problem serving the system? Okay. And then you move into the next phase. Yes. Mm. Mm. You could ask it to say, it seems like you're getting in so much trouble with your parents, right? Like you're grounded, you're here talking to me because you don't want to go home, you hate it so much. And every time they find this vape in in your bag, you get into such big troubles. And we've talked about this before, and you said this is like your fourth time that they find it and they ground you, and it's getting worse every time. And I'm going to assume this is something you don't like, right? He says, yeah, I don't like it. Can you help me understand what keeps you going back to it? So here is the question, but asked differently. How is the problem serving the system? This is on an example of vaping, but it could be something like someone getting angry. In your textbook, there is a section on defense mechanisms. When someone gets angry, say, okay, what's going on? This guy is crazy. No, this guy is not crazy. This guy has learned that it's better to be tough and angry than to be soft and open up the stuff that's hurtful, right? So it's that anger is serving them. It's actually helping them survive. It's helping them feel safe in an unsafe environment, right? So the problem is serving the system. It's one of those things you check in for. Phase 5 is the challenge phase. So you've connected, you've collected, you have checked in, you have become creative in understanding what's happening, and now it's time to do a little bit of soft and sometimes not too soft confrontations. 99% of the time, when people are in conflicts, they're also in contradiction. You get that? They're in conflicts, they're also in contradictions. So, for example, they say, oh, you know what? I had such a wonderful time with this person, but I hate their guts. So here's a contradiction. On one hand, you say you've had such a wonderful time. On the other hand, you say you hate their guts. How do you put the two together? So that's a way of doing soft confrontation. Is when you hear a contradiction, you say, oh, that's interesting. So on one hand, X, on the other hand, Y. Can you help me understand how you put them together? So that's a soft confrontation. And you can learn something from that. So how do I behave or think differently? Here is the challenge phase. Question inconsistencies and incongruencies. That's basically what when you confront. So from a Christian perspective, you can think of it as there's a house of contradictions. The first square on the left is maybe this person is following lies. I'm ugly. Well, no, you're not ugly. But they actually believe that as a truth when it's a lie. Maybe it was said to them when they were young. You don't look good. You're always not looking good. So they grow up with these schemas as like lenses. I'm ugly. Or um, people will not say this necessarily openly, but inside of them, they do something called negative self-talk, where they say, I'm a failure, I'm no good, I'm not like so and so, I am not as good as my friends, I think I'm just an imposter, I look something on the outside, but I'm completely a complete failure at the inside. And people don't hear that except the person. There's constant negative talks, putting that person down all the time. These are lies. They're not true. So if you discover them and you bring them out and you begin to confront them softly and you begin to help them. So have you always thought of yourself as a failure? Or there has been a time where you actually thought, hey, I did well in this. And they might say, oh, yeah, actually, one time I felt like I did well when I did this presentation or I helped this person. Oh, so that's like an exception to what you're saying is usually the case. Say, okay. Oh, what else? Has there been another exception? Something similar to that? And you'll be surprised what people bring up. Okay, but this is where you as someone counseling youth, you are not just listening to the youth, as you do much of that, you do active listening, but your mind is on the things they're not listening to. And you may discover a lies, you encounter them, then there needs to be a renewal of the mind. But there could be a sin. It could be that the problem that is happening in the life of that person is because they are living a sinful life. They are living a life far from God. And so they have these thoughts because if they can come closer to God, they'll actually hear what God is telling them about them. You are my child. I love you. I've sent my son to die for you. All that, but they're not close to God and they're falling into a sinful life. It could be that as they repent from a life of sin, that could be the way out of their problem. It could be that there is unforgiveness. So some people will hold so much hatred and anger and stiffness and rigidity, and all this is causing them social issues. They're not doing well at school, um, and it could be that because they are not forgiving at home. So a child could hold their parents who are always fighting, could hold them at fault, of course, and not forgive them because of what they're doing. And this lack of forgiveness can cause a lot of fixation and complexities within a child as they come to their teen age, they begin to explode somehow. So it might need some releasing, as simple as, you know what, in your shoes, I'd be very angry at my parents too. Anger is not a sin, by the way. So I say, I would be angry. It's almost like, wow, like someone else would feel the same way that I feel. That could act as a way of releasing because a lot of conflict exists. I'm angry at my parents, but they're my parents. I'm not supposed to be angry at them. Well, yeah, they're your parents. And yet, what maybe they're doing, let's say a parent is beating them up or the parent is abusing them and they get in conflict. Can I be loving and angry at the same caregiver? That's a conflict in the mind and the heart of a child. But when you say, no, but the abuse is wrong. I, there's nothing wrong in being upset at that. That's hurtful. So, wow, okay, so at least I'm like the feeling that I have is normal. Obviously, do not normalize something that is not normal, right? Or it could be there is a mental agreement, and you see that a lot in people who suffer from some level or complete level of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, where mental agreement, if I were to do this or say this verse, and if it's a religious person, it takes from religion. If I were to pray the psalm 3 times, I'm going to pass my exam. And if they make sure they pray the Psalms 3 times, or else they know they're gonna fail the exam. Or if I were to do this, then the bad thing that is in my mind won't happen. Again, it's a form of mental agreement, but it's hurtful. So then we need to renounce these false vows. They are mental vows, and it would help them to realize that no, you cannot hold on to these mental agreements because they're hurting you. They're upsetting your life. Phase 6 is come along. So we've done, you can walk through with this. First is connect to collect. So connect, then connect, then collect, then check in, then being creative, right? Then, so challenge or confrontational. And then the 6th one is now it's time to come along. What has changed and how? So now that we've had these times where we've talked about, how you burst in anger towards your mom, and that you always regret this and it doesn't turn out good and you feel bad. And we've talked about the circumstances, how they happen, how you feel, what you think, what other people think. We've done the work, and we've decided that you're going to try something else. We talked about a new cycle, and you've been trying this. How have things changed? And that's usually a good question to ask if you're meeting up with them again. Let's say fourth, fifth time in serving youth, you'll meet with them many times. So it could be that on one-on-one, you're meeting the fifth or sixth time after they tried something new, and say, so from last time we spoke till today, what has changed? That makes them, almost you put them on the track of something must change. What is it? And they could come and say, so nothing really changed. Oh, nothing really happened, huh? Well, really, I tried. Oh, you tried. That's before you didn't try. Now you tried. That's a change. What else? What happened when you tried? Well, I did this. I did that. You help them. You come along with them, and you check what has changed. And here is very key thing with anyone, especially the youth. When someone says, "Abuna, my life changed," you just met them last week, and their life was completely upside down, and they come the next week and they say everything is good, my parents are so kind to me, I'm very kind to them, and I believe in miracles, don't misunderstand me, I believe in miracles, but I also believe things just don't happen like this. There must have been something that caused the change. So I ask, so that's amazing. So I join with them, I empathize. How do you feel about this? Oh, I'm so much at peace. I feel like this is the life that I always wanted with my parents for the last 15 years. That's great. Can you help me understand how the change happened? I don't know. It just happened. Interesting. Have you done anything that helped the change? No, it's just happened. My parents became very nice to me. Oh, that's very nice. So they became nice to you. And when they were nice to you, what did you do to keep that niceness going? And then you say, well, I smiled. I came down and I helped my mom with some of the stuff, and I worked with my dad in the garage on this. Do you usually do that? No, I don't. So you joined and helped and smiled, do you think this may have kept the change going? Okay. So there's something that changed that caused the change. Always put the locus of change inside of them. What have you done? How can you keep? And then the next question is near the end. So if you were to go on this week and continue the change, what do you think you need to do behavior in order to keep this change until we meet again in 2 weeks? So here you anchor it in behavior, in an action, in something tangible. And remember the SMART goals, SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So in 2 weeks, time bound. So um, what does the change look like? So some people say, for example, they're very problem focused. They come and say, you know, I my life with God is bad. So here's a spiritual scenario. My life with God is bad. I don't think I'll ever be a good Christian. I don't think I'll ever be a good youth. I hate myself. Say, okay, so something is telling you currently you're not a good Christian. Yes. What does a good Christian look like to you? Well, I think that means like I come to church early in the morning. I start praying and reading my Bible. Say, okay, what's that like? Like if you read your Bible and pray, what makes that a good Christian? It's almost like they're thinking machine style, you know. You put or ingredients like you're just adding to make a cake. No, there is more than ingredients in baking, right? But it's a start. Without the ingredients, you cannot bake. But there is more than ingredients in baking, right? So you help them see the change, discover the change, understand the change, and keep the change, maintenance. So when we speak about change, you've probably seen this. There is a rectangle that depicts the change. The first part here, let's look at my hand like this, is called premeditation. I never thought of the change. I'll never worry about the change. There is no change in my mind. For example, you need to stop smoking. Yeah, it's not in my not on my mind. It's not gonna happen. And then something or some things keep on happening. Maybe you read research. Maybe you hear of someone who died of lung cancer because he was or she was a smoker. Whatever. Then over time you begin to think, and when you begin to think, you change from premeditation to meditation. Now you're the one thinking, not someone thinking for you. And then when you keep thinking, you reach a point where you do action. You say, okay, I'm going to go to the pharmacist. I'm going to take nicotine gums. I'm going to talk to my doctor. I'm going to do some smoking cessation work. And then you're doing it. And then you reach the last phase, which is called maintenance. Now that you stop smoking, can you continue not smoking? And here there is like almost like an arrow that goes out like this or out like that. It's called relapse. So often we're not thinking, but then we begin to think, we begin the action and the change, we maintain it, and we think we're done. It's very important when you talk to your youth about change that you also tackle relapse. Because a lot of people, when they relapse, they go back to premeditation. They're not thinking about it. So I'm not bothering about it. So when talking about relapse, you're doing prevention. You're saying, hold on, when that happens, because it could happen. I'm not saying if it happens, like when it happens, because it could happen. How do you go back to maintenance and not to premeditation? And you expand on that. And now phase 7 is closure phase. Prevention for future, summarizing and looking forward. Some of what I mentioned about relapse here, but also how do you stop meeting with someone who has been meeting with you every week on Friday night for the last 6 months? That's a lot of weekly meeting. And almost like you developed a friendship. What do you do? How how do you move on? How does this person move on? Do they need you when they go to school? Do they need you when they go to uni? Do they need you when they're in home? Do they need like a mini servant with them? They can, no, there has to be a way to come to termination where I'm not gonna always be there. So let's talk about how do we end this and yet you can be launched to be on your own. And when you say that, you're thinking probably another 5 or 6 sessions or 4 sessions, or 4 times you're still meeting with them. So when you speak about termination, you're not talking, oh, and today we part our ways, because that could feel like abandonment. It can bring about the same old feelings that caused the problem, but now because of your relationship with them. So it's like you're almost sabotaging your own work with them. So you got to talk about termination as a process. How do we do this? And deal with the feelings that they will get about that feeling of loss, abandonment, feeling like they are not valuable. All these old feelings can come up again. So you got to make sure you handle them when you do speak about termination. Okay, this was a quick overview of counseling model, the general common elements. Any questions? Five minutes break. Nina, you had a question. Go ahead. Yes, excellent question. To know when to for example, dealing with someone who's a little bit anxious, so severity or intensity will be one of your criteria. Or someone who is anxious, they're getting panic attacks. Or someone who is suicidal or has suicidal ideations. You're not really trained. I'm going to give you some training on suicide management, assessment and management. But once someone tells you, I get these intense thoughts of killing myself, and I thought of doing this, and they have almost like a plan in mind. You just the fact that they're suicidal would give you like a red flag. Okay, this is beyond me. This is beyond my training. That's yeah. But so I give you the example of anxiety, for example, substance abuse. Someone is vaping, for example, and or someone is like they're blazing, they're using like cannabis and stuff like that. Uh, they've tried it once or twice. You probably could work with them. They do it every single day. You're not going to work. You can work with them as a counselor, as a helper, as a Christian counselor, as someone in the church, as someone who can help them be a positive influence on them. But these people are now potentially addicted. They have some danger, like health hazards. They need to speak to a professional. And how we do this? First, you bring it to the person responsible for that service, and then you have a consultation with them and the priest. Especially in a community of like ours, there is a way to handle this, because sometimes people they feel shame in a community. They feel like, now I'm exposed, and so on. So there is a way to handle it in one context versus another. Yeah, but we'll speak specifically of when we refer in every case study we will do. Yeah. Okay, okay. Mhm. Yeah. So I would say yes, generally yes, to your question. Usually servants discuss their services together from within one group. But there are certain things that you don't share, like private. They're private, and they're private, and they're not dangerous. So someone comes to me and say, Abuna, I want to tell you something, but I want you to promise me you will never say anything. Say, okay, first of all, if it's confession, there's no way on earth I'm going to say anything to anybody. It's done. It's complete silence. But if what you think is confession is not confession, and I say that to the person before they speak, I say, so for example, if you tell me, Abuna, I want to confess that I'm going to go hurt my brother, and I'm going to hurt them bad, or I'm going to go hurt my friend at school, and I'm going to punch them in the face until they bleed. Now, see, this is not a confession. It doesn't follow the criteria of confession. Confession requires repentance, but you're planning, you're premeditating. Huh? So I say, no, here this is not a confession. So I give them examples before they open up and say anything so that they know. If say, I intend to kill myself, I say, that's not a confession. That's not a confession. If someone is confessing, say, Abuna, I feel so bad. I feel like I'm falling into the sin of thinking negatively, wanting to kill myself. And I want to repent from that. So that's a repentance. But then I say, okay, well, have you sought help? No, you need help. But I'm too ashamed. So let's talk about that. But there's no way I'm going to let you go and pick up your dad's gun and kill yourself tonight. It's not going to happen. So I'm not going to tell anyone, but you're not leaving my office. So let's stay until you get convinced. We have to do something about it. Obviously, I'm a priest. In that sense, there is a confessional confidentiality. In your case, you let the youth know, so we can talk about everything, but if there's something that is dangerous or puts you or someone else, at the point of danger, you'll have to follow my lead. This is a structure that a lot of people misunderstand. It's almost like everyone is an expert in this society. The kid becomes an expert. I value children, but they're not experts when it comes to what's going on in their lives that could be dangerous or dangerous to others. There's this flip type of mentality. Everybody is an expert. No, no. That's why when you go to a physician, for example, and you say, doctor, let me tell you what my diagnosis is. Well, you could tell anything you want to tell. It's okay. But doesn't make you the expert. We got to still do imaging. We have to do this. And then this is what it is. Now, you don't want to be convinced that that's what it is. It's your life, of course. But if that life is going to impact the life of some other people, we got to talk. 5 minutes. So 4:10. 4:10, we resume. We'll come back to substance abuse. Before 6. 5 to 6. 10 to 6. Yes, so 5 to 6. I have to leave by 6 sharp. So 5 to 6, maybe questions after. Number 1, drug and alcohol abuse. So drug, whether it be medicinal drugs that become abused or street drugs and alcohol abuse. What people probably don't know is that alcohol is extremely accessible. We have no issues. LCBOs are everywhere, right? And beer stores and so on and so on. And people think, oh, because there is an age limitation, these people are not going to access alcohol. Alcohol is everywhere. Actually, alcohol is at home. Parents drink and they have bars, and when they do, the kids know how to access that stuff. So it's not like your street drug where you really have to know someone to get you the drug, even though that's very easy. It's not very hard, but it's not as accessible as alcohol. And alcohol tastes nice. So it's not really hurting you. When you drink alcohol, it has some flavor to it, even simple wine or anything that has flavor. Whereas when you smoke something, you may feel like you start coughing, for example. But alcohol, accessible, could be a little bit pleasurable to the taste, depending obviously on what you're drinking. And depending on your weight and your body fats and all that, it could kick in very quickly or could take a little bit longer, and it's not so easy to tell. So someone can slip into an alcohol abuse or abuse of alcohol, or actually a disorder, what is known as alcohol use disorder, AUD, or SUD, substance use disorder. These are disorders. They are in the diagnostic manual. They're very serious, very serious. So, and when you drink when you're young, your chances of having an SUD or an AUD is very high. When your family has a history of someone with blacking out on drinking, your risk of doing the same is very high. It's one of those things that your environment actually and your genes play. There is genetic component in alcohol use disorder. So, anyways, backgrounds. It, so basically, the person cannot stop, needs the alcohol, blacks out on the alcohol, and repeats every day. And no matter what, whether they want to stop or not, they're not able to stop on their own. It's a disorder. They need treatment. So number one drug problem is alcoholism. Age of experimentation with alcohol is getting younger and younger. Junior high are making decisions regarding alcohols and drugs. Junior high, grades 6, 7, and 8. Warning signs of teenage alcohol drug abuse. So these are things that will make you wonder, okay, is this person abusing alcohol? One, social withdrawal. Two, deterioration in school performance. Three, resistance to authority. Behavioral problems. Engaging in high risk behavior, such as stealing, extreme mood swings can also be signs of depression. And by the way, SUDs and AUDs, they coexist with other problems. So they wake up late every day. They're missing appointments. They're not going to school on time. They're skipping class. All these can be weight. If these are also signs. Observable signs: alcohol on the breath. So Friday night, God forbid, you come in and you hug your youth, and oh my goodness, it's like it's there. Slurred speech, and so on. Dilated pupils. If you could ever you're close enough to look and you find their pupils very dilated, very, very wide. Also, the presence of drug paraphernalia like pipes, pill boxes, straw spoons, jewels, and so on. And clothing depicting the smell, or like you can actually find that there is a smell of drug. We need to distinguish between two categories, or at least in the diagnostic manual, there's two. There's something called psychoactive substance abuse, and there's something called psychoactive substance dependence. So psychoactive means it actually has an impact on your psyche, on your feelings, on your moods, on your psychology. Substance is understandable. One is abuse, one is dependence. So abuse is they're misusing it, they're not using it properly. It could even be prescription drugs. It could be cough syrups. Those are probably one of the most abused ones. But dependence is like, I can't concentrate unless I go out and smoke a joint. And you hear that. Some of the youth would tell me, Abuna, if I'm to listen to anything in class, I gotta smoke a joint. So that's dependence, where their normal functionality isn't happening unless they use the substance. So there are some assessment tools. I'm not going to bore you with those, but there is stage 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Stage 0 is when someone has curiosity about the certain substance. Stage 1 is when they start learning the mood swing. So adolescent learns how easy it is to feel good with few, if any, consequences, except perhaps a little bit of a mild guilt. But they feel good when they use this. That's stage one. Stage two is seeking the mood swings. I've had such a bad day, I really want to get home so I can do this. I'm seeking it. Stage three, preoccupation with the mood swings. Being drunk is the main goal of life in stage three. Students who drink daily may plan these drinking days around trips to euphoria, like they want to get to euphoria. They want to get to this high state. And stage four is drinking just to feel okay. When they don't drink, they're not okay. That's addiction. That's a high level of addiction. Their euphoria becomes harder and harder to achieve. They used to enjoy it, now they're not getting it. They need to increase the substance. Larger amounts are needed, and it keeps going, so tolerance builds. So 4 possible and common types of adolescent drug users. So in terms of stages, when it says stage 0, curiosity, 1, they're learning the mood swings, 2, they're seeking it, 3, they're preoccupied with it, 4, it's not happening unless they keep increasing. 4 principal and common types of adolescent drug users. You have the experimenter. They experiment up to 4 or 5 times in order to gain acceptance from their peers. The recreationists, they use drug to share pleasurable experiences with peers and friends, not to achieve a mood or mental effect from the substance, but just to have a good time with friends. That's the recreationist. The seeker, they seek an altered state of mental state, and they use the drug or the alcohol regularly to achieve either a sedative or a stimulant effect, depending on what they're using. And then you have the 4th type called the drug head. In slang, we call them potheads, like drug head or pothead. This is a sick adolescent, sick, who has moved to regular use of of hard drugs like cocaine or heroin. So they're not using cannabis. They're now, or hashish or stuff like that. No, they're using serious cocaine, serious heroin. And he or she is now addicted. So what drug category is being used? So what are the drugs out there? What are their categories? One, they're the ones called depressants. Depressants, they like exactly what the word means. It slows down the activity of the nervous system. Alcohol is a depressant. Some inhalants, like people who get high on glue, or nail polish removers, or cleaning fluids, or gasoline. So when people cannot find or cannot afford, they look for anything. And these are depressant. They cause a slowing down in the nervous system. Also, minor tranquilizer like Valium, lorazepam, sedatives, so like barbiturates. So we're getting more specific here. All depressants except one of them called PCP can be obtained legally. So all the depressants can be obtained legally except PCP. I don't remember what that stands for, but it's one of the depressants, and it's illegal. You cannot get it from the pharmacy. Stimulants is another one. So you have depressants, you have the opposite, stimulants. They stimulate activity, they suppress appetite, they get your emotional depression feeling better. احنا ممكن نحطه دلوقتي هنا هو لغايه ما نجيب الترابيزه ونحط عليها ونحطه كده. اصل انا خايف نحطه هنا هيقع. بس احنا ممكن نحطه كده. Can you name any stimulants? Good morning. Good morning. Huh? Coffee. Yeah. Caffeine. Huh? Caffeine, nicotine, amphetamines, cocaine is a stimulant. Then you have hallucinogens. Hallucinogens are mind distorters. They create uh, an alternative or an altered perception of reality, and these are all illegal. Marijuana, which is now not the case. Marijuana, دلوقتي في Canada, like in the States, is not. LSD, something called mescaline, those are hallucinogens. And then you have narcotics. So those that have like codeine, morphine, heroin, they're highly, highly, highly addictive. Even people who take them for as a painkiller, eventually their doctor wants them off it or less on it and on something else. Uh, so why then the struggle happens with alcohol and substance? They're so bad like this. Why do people struggle with them? What do you think teenagers, what makes them struggle with them? And why do they want to create an alternative reality? So there is something about what's going on in their lives that's causing dissatisfaction. And these could be things like uh, family factors. It could be media influence. So a lot of drug use and substance use all over the media, all over the media. Peer pressure, could be something genetics, could be also personality factors. So someone who suffers from low self-esteem would be more vulnerable to SUD and AUD or alcohol or abuse in general of the substances. So when I say low self-esteem, low expectation for personal achievement, lacks impulse control, highly adventurous and wanting independence, seeking inclusion in a social group. Who am I describing? Youth, exactly. And these are all risk factors, and they all happen to happen for the adolescents. So how to help? Once you start intervening, uh, keep the following in mind. One, parents are to be involved day one. I'm talking about our context. Parents must get involved because some of what's causing or leading the child to resort to something like this may have to do with the parents, or at least the parents are the ones who will be with them at home. They need to know. And they are minors. And we're trying to help them. How we get the parents involved, that's a different story. How we get them involved, how we talk to the teen about this, how we lead the teen to seek some help, and so on. That's the how. But at the end of the day, a parent, unless the parent is violent, a parent is abusive, so it's not going to be good for them, obviously, but somebody has to know. A family member must know. Hopefully, a caregiver for obviously the first. So you need also to keep in mind some info about the drugs to be provided truthfully. So you gotta know something about these substances in order to speak to the team about the impact of the drugs or impact of the alcohol, because sometimes they just lack the education. They don't know. Like someone told me, I only vape. I don't smoke cigarettes. I only vape. Oh, it's just I only vape. It's not harmful. Why? Because vaping was commercialized and marketed for the younger generation, younger teens, as a better or safer alternative than cigarettes. Health promoting alternatives for use of free time, or how to cope with depression or sadness, or how to get out of the bad moods instead of going to substance. Students are given opportunities to explore capabilities and ways to contribute in meaningful ways to school and their families, so they become, working on their identity. Substance use or abuse, substance abuse specifically, is never the main problem. It can become a problem, of course, for other things, but it's never the source. It is what we call maladaptive behavior. People go to it to cover something else or to heal something else. It doesn't heal, it numbs. and then you have a compounded problem on your hands. But someone who drinks, it's probably because they're going through difficulty in relationships, difficulty with their own thoughts about themselves, causing them mood swings or depression or sadness, and they just want out of that, like we say, an alternative reality. So it is not the root problem, there is another root problem. Yeah, peer pressure is one of the factors that lead to this. But if someone uh, has good self-confidence, they won't fall into that peer pressure. Very few, not many, very few. So sometimes we need to refer the family to counseling. Sometimes, and here's where we know this is beyond me. I need to refer. I need to get someone else involved so that someone can speak to this family. Because a family is not going to take it well if a servant goes and speak to them. I'm talking about within our community. They'll feel like they were exposed unless they know the servant really well. And sometimes even knowing the servant really well causes more problem. Plug into the support of a church. Consider inpatient treatment. So some people cannot be treated as outpatient, as like in community. They have to be either they go into a detox center or they get admitted into inpatient programs. Their level of severity will not get any better if they're treated outside these programs. So also to consider things like Alcoholic Anonymous program, the 12-step program, which by the way have been shown to be very effective. So these are what we call evidence-based treatments. They do help and have been proven to be helpful. Also exploring cognitive distortions. Like I said, wrong beliefs of self, old beliefs about the necessity of using drugs to create excitements and adventures. So wrong way of thinking. So this is where CBT, when we send them to a psychotherapist, they'll work with them. They can use something called acceptance therapy or CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. They can actually use solution-focused therapy. There are other many types of therapy that can be helpful. That's beyond your scope. So 3 common distortions. I don't think this is I won't mention it because I mentioned it in the case. Also, they need to be taught stress management because a lot of what leads to substance abuse is stress. So how do I handle stress? How do I cope with my anxiety? Instead of turning to the drugs for escape, improving a youth spirituality. How do I improve in my relationship with God? And I've seen people actually quit gambling, quit things like drug abuse, and so because they focused on their relationship with God and also did some treatments, and that sustains them. Referrals then to MD for medical examination for sure, for level of frequency. Those who have high frequency of use or high intensity, then they need to be referred. Or sometimes we refer to a detox center, especially if it's affecting their safety or that of others. So they not only are they drinking in grade 12, but they've had driving under the influence ticket, DUI. Now you know you're not going to just talk to them on Friday and they're going to snap out of it. It doesn't mean you don't talk to them, but it means you talk to them and you must always refer to somebody who can actually help them out. So here's a case study. Matt is 16. He was brought to you by his mom, who was tired of dealing with his drug abuse problems. Matt's school was also threatening him with expulsion unless he secured immediate treatment. He was caught drinking alcohol in the morning on school property 2 months ago. And more recently, school officials discovered marijuana in his locker. He denied having any problem with drinking or drugs. He says, it is as if I committed murder or something. But did report smoking marijuana now and then. As a young boy, Matt was pleasant and never seemed to cause much trouble. In junior high, however, he began to hang out with young people his mom and dad did not like. They said he started listening to weird and loud music, and he begged and begged to go to, uh, this concert with his friends until I just let him go. 4 years ago, his parents separated. His dad had reported that he discovered that Matt and his friends use an old rusted out van that is up on blocks on blocks in a neighbor's backyard as their drug club. His mom said they use this van to contain the smoke within and increase the effect of marijuana. What are you wondering about? Here is someone with that description. Talk to me about your thoughts as a counselor in the church, as someone you're serving in youth ministry. What comes to your mind? What do you want to ask? What are you thinking? You've seen him in church before. Yeah, he's now in grade 11. You've seen him before. He's come. He used to be part of the opening service, and he used to engage in prayer. You've seen him a couple of times serve as a deacon before, but lately it's been like a year or so he hasn't. So what do you want to explore? Tell me, you're consulting on this case. You're consulting. How does he feel that others think he has substance abuse? Yeah, okay. Yeah, you want to discover that. You want to feel get an idea of what he's feeling about what others are saying. Sure. Go ahead. Go ahead. So it could be now. Yeah, there's a question mark on. Has the family issue caused him something that he's trying to escape? Okay, that's a something to consider. What else are you wondering about? So he doesn't think he's having any problems. He's in denial. Mhm. Yeah, how does yeah, so he seems to be using some alcohol and also he started to smoke marijuana. So you want to explore what do they do to him? Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what do you want to find out, or what are you asking? What are you consulting? What are you saying? Oh, so what are the precipitating factors? Mm, mm, very good. Where is he paying for this? How is he getting this the substances? Yeah, what is his daily routine? What makes you interested in that? Oh, should I? Okay. Okay, so you wanna understand which stage of drug abuse he's at. What do you think his stage is? Do you remember the stages? Zero, curiosity. One, not zero. One, so he's getting euphoric, yes. What in the story tells you that he's probably stage 3? And stage 3 or 4, sorry? They log the van to increase the intensity. So he's probably stage 3 or 4. Yes. The collect. Mhm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you wanna collect some background on how this problem has started. How is it being maintained? Mm-hmm. Good. So you have that area, especially that the mom and the dad are divorced. What was the impact on Matt's? 4 years ago, his parents separated, so he was 12. And prior to the separation, they probably were not on good terms. So you also want to know if there is a genetic component here. Like, does the dad drink or mom drinks or have used substance or not? You'd be surprised. Maybe they have substance, no, but maybe the drinking. Maybe he'd tell you, like, my dad used to drink every single night, or my dad used. Mhm. Yeah, he's 16, so they're trying. Mhm. Yeah. But think of this as a case. You're right about what you're saying, 100%. But think of it as a drug or substance abuse case. So try and think from what we talked about and apply there. But I agree with you. We have to connect. We have to definitely do the initial stage. Yeah, and is forced to sit with you because mom said you got to talk to your servant, for example, or Abuna said, by the way, Mark, I want you to take care of this person. Talk to them. So what are you gonna do? Stone him later. Don't condemn now. Oh, yeah. Mm. Hmm. Right. So what do I want to do instead? So that's what I'm not gonna do. What do I know? What do I want to do instead? So I want to find that out. Yeah, very important. I think he needs it. As professionals, we may not help him because we're not, but we're servants. What can we do? Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Sure, you're right. So how do I empathize? What do I do? Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And in order to do all this as a servant, I would need to spend some serious time with this boy. So I need individual outreach service. I could take him out. I can build a friendship with him. I can maybe connect him with another person with me. So one of the other tough, good youth, very connected in the church, and then take them out together, begin to form a new friendship, an alternative friendship, maybe two other youth and him. Depends. So if they're coming out with me, طبعا I can mitigate the risk. بس طبعا I have to prep open up, he will talk. So they'll know. So don't go on your own with him. If anything, you bring him to go to an outing with you, but don't go join him and his friends. I have to pick, rightly pick, and I have to follow up with those youth regularly. And my role as a servant, I have to be always present in those outings, initially at least, until he begins to detach from these other guys for one reason or the other. And at the same time, there's a new relationship forming. And I've seen this happen here many times. And then the person begins to come here on Friday night, begins to come here, with other youth. Oh yeah, they take time. Immediate solutions. Yeah, yeah. Now, push a button, push a button, push a button. No. Okay, let's do. Yeah, yeah. Yes. Mm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we could have been absent as a service or church. It's just true. Or we could have been very active and helped, which would be great prevention. And yeah, I've had also children, kids who completely gone down the wrong path for sure. Yeah, yeah, it definitely puts a responsibility on us. Okay, let's do the next one. Emotional issues, depression specifically. Okay, so some depression in adolescence is normal. So the blues, what we call the blues, they have swings. There are times where they're not happy, and there are times where they're okay, and it's up and down. So um, when depression becomes debilitating, it holds them back from normal life. Then we now have a bigger issue. It's not a normal one. So sad facial expression, loss of interest in school, in church, don't like to go to their leisure activities. They used to play basketball or soccer, and they're not doing that anymore. They're easily agitated and irritated. They have a constant feeling of inferiority when they open up, feelings of worthlessness, helplessness. They have sense of guilt, insomnia or hypersomnia. So they're either not sleeping or sleeping a lot. Loss of appetite or excessive eating, what we call emotional eating. So they eat because they want to feel better. Obviously, if you eat something that tastes good, it makes you feel better. So that's called emotional eating. They eat to feel better. Social withdrawal, as I mentioned, with the substance as well. And I told you with substance, SUD and AUD, they are comorbid, meaning they coexist with depression. Various types. We have what we call endogenous depression, biochemical disturbance in the hormonal system. So it's endogenous. It's something that has to do with the nervous system and the hormonal level within the body. It's internal, something biological. um, This happens spontaneously. So something goes on. So when people go to the physician and they come to a counselor, or even you, like everything is good, and all of a sudden the person is depressed, what we call acute depression. It makes you think this is not just, unless you don't know, like you were kept in the dark thinking this person's life was all good, but actually it wasn't. That's not what I'm talking about. Talking everything is good, you know the person, and all of a sudden they're down, and they're down for a while, for some time. Then you wonder, maybe it has to do with hormonal changes, maybe chemical changes, maybe something endogenous, usually found in elderly or in psychotic disorders, and requires medical interventions because the chemical imbalance is not going to change unless you change it. Reactive, yeah, the who? Youth, yeah. Usually happens with the elderly, but it can happen to anybody. Oh, we're not talking about the normal change in hormones. That will produce swings up and down. What we're talking about, something is abnormal, not normal development. Reactive or exogenous depression, this is due to a real or imagined or threatened loss. So it's either they have lost something, or they're imagining something that is a loss, but it's not a loss. Like they constructed in their mind, this is a loss. It's not a loss, but in their mind it is. In their minds it is. Or threatened loss, like something they are anticipating will happen. Lasts no longer than a few months. Typically found in adolescents, and counseling is usually the treatment. Counseling meaning like talking to a psychotherapist or a therapist. Then you have neurotic depression. This is a lifestyle response, a lifelong response to stress and anxiety. That's why we say to people, be careful if you're under stress for a prolonged period of time. It you're gonna break at one point. It's not you might, no, it's just a matter of when. If you're always under pressure, under stress. And some of these stressors are external stressors, sometimes unavoidable in a way, and sometimes internal stressors. Escaping from other emotions and develops over a long period of time. So the one you will deal with mostly will be the reactive one, the exogenous from outside type of depression. Yeah, depression is sadness. Anxiety is I am worried. They come together, but they're different. But usually a person, they say they call them sisters. Should call them brothers too. They call them sisters. Sorry for the feminist movement, right? But they call them sisters in the sense that they come together. They're twin sisters. Usually, when someone is depressed, they have anxiety components, and usually people who have anxiety, they develop depression. So causes of depression. Sometimes there's no obvious cause. There is some evidence that genetics can be a predisposition to depression that's biologically based. Life experiences. So while life experiences do not have to lead to depression, the interpretation of life experiences may lead to depression, and they may increase your probability of having depression. So in our context religiously, you're like فلان ده شايل صلبان كتير. But these crosses that they're carrying, if they're carrying them and they see a good sense of connection with the suffering Lord, they may accept them. But if they misinterpret them or interpret them as God abandoning them or God punishing them, or then these become complicated experiences. Powerlessness. So an adolescent who experiences anger in a situation over which they have no control, like um, parents who are perfectionists, and they put much pressure on them to perform in a certain way, comparing them to their brothers or siblings or cousins, and always putting them down this way, feels unable to express their anger, they may become depressed. Um, when the father or the mother are domineering, like they're very dominant at home, or they're very unpredictable, like you never know when dad will snap, you'll never know when mom will go berserk, you don't know. But it happens, and it happens regularly since they were as far as they remember. Yeah, one sibling, you might find they become very anxious and they cry and they push, 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 push. And another one who is very quiet, you think he's the best or she's the best sibling. But no, that person who is quiet is reacting internally, whereas the other one is reacting externally. Um, negative thinking can create a spiraling effect for the adolescents who find this hard to break out of. And as I spoke about negative self-talks, these are, some of the causes of depression. So you think of depression as a cognitive triad for depression: negative thoughts of self, negative thoughts of experiences, negative thoughts of future. And this last one has anxiety piece to it. But these, they call it the cognitive triad. Three things happen in the mind of the person suffering from depression. They have negative thoughts about themselves, they have negative thoughts about their environment and their experiences and life, and they have negative thoughts about the future. Automatic thoughts, they're automatic. They happen much faster than a person can catch them unless they train themselves to catch them. And that's where therapy comes in. Unreasonable and dysfunctional. So the thought is automatic, happens like this. Secondly, the thought is actually non-operational. It is dysfunctional. It makes your life more difficult, and it's unreasonable. It's unreasonable, in other words, is irrational. The thought is not rational. Seem completely plausible and uncritically accepted. So to the mind of the person, the thought is like perfect truth, and it's not to be debated until they begin to debate it and say, oh, of course it's not true. And in this event, how can I think of myself as I don't have any good thing in my life? And you hear these automatic thoughts like, I'm never good at anything, the word never. I'm always bad. Well, always? Well, no, you're talking nicely to me now. Are you bad? No. So, but the thought is plausible and uncritically accepted. Yani the person does not critically analyze the thought. And one of the things that get learned in therapy is to critically analyze the thoughts. And involuntary, really, it's almost like it's automatic, it's involuntary. Just to give you, this is a quick overview of some of the cognitive error: all or nothing thinking. So it's either I am the best students in class or I'm a failure. There's nothing in there's all spectrum in between, but no. Overgeneralizing. Since I am not uh, good at school, then I'm also not going to be good at sports, or vice versa, whatever. So and so on. And I don't want to. And the shoulds. This one is a big one. Should statements. You know, um, they're good shoulds and they're bad shoulds. Can you give me a good should for a teenager? I have an exam next week. I should study. عادي. Give me a bad should. Yeah, I should get 100% on all my exams. But I'm like, in English. مش حتى math ولا يعني in English, in history, on an essay. Or my bicycle broke. I should always learn how to fix the bicycle. Well, it'd be good if you learn it, but the person might say, I should learn how to fix the bicycle. I should learn how to plant the tree. I should do this. I should do everything. No. So these shoulds also exist in culture. Culture puts a lot of shoulds that could hurt you, right? You should come to liturgy. Sure. But how are you in liturgy? How do you pray? You must fast. You should fast. Oh, sure, I know I should fast, but I don't understand anything about the fast, and it doesn't do me any good except the stomach pain and diarrhea. So maybe I should say, I should, as a servant, help my youth understand the spirituality behind. This is a good should. Of course, it's important to come to liturgy, but it's not like a magic thing. You add this, like again, the ingredient example. Ingredients are important, but baking is more than ingredients. Schemas. Schemas are lenses that people put on when they're young and could eventually have on, and it does direct their lives. So these schemas are interaction with another by interacting with mom and dad first and my immediate family. As a child, I begin to have a view of safety, what is safe, what is not, what is good, what is not, what is acceptable, what is not, view of myself. All these are schemas. Schemas are, change the word schema and put lens. So I could have a healthy schema or I could have a depressed schema. So a healthy schema, I feel liked by the other. Depressed schema, I feel disliked or I feel threatened by others. General helping strategies. So the youth who is being depressed, generally speaking, with them and anyone coming to counseling, but especially people who are down, they are dying for hope. They want to hear some like hope-giving words and expectations. So talk about the hope found in Christ and what that means practically. How is it that I hope in Christ? What is it that you hoped in Christ as a servant? And the meaning found in serving God. People can feel depressed because they feel their lives are meaningless. Reflecting feelings, they need to be more directive. They need to be more directive in their helping because of the adolescents' reduced ability to take initiative. So you sit with someone depressed, if you're not careful, you'll find your own conversations are changing to be depressing conversations. But as someone who's helping, you have to be very careful. You want to change the language bit by bit, not them changing your. And it causes you fatigue, impairments. That's why, as servants, we have to have spiritual self-care, physical self-care, psychological self-care. We cannot just serve, 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 and not have a time to pray and calm ourselves down and go on retreats and go to the gym and go on a marathon. There was one today, and so on and so forth. We have to be very much aware of how this impacts us. Of course, if they're suicidal, they'll need professional help or suicide intervention management. Steps to help. So you want to assess the severity. Don't bore yourself. These are for counselors. But when I taught this course for at the University of Toronto, we had to teach also the assessments. We don't have to learn the assessments. Identify negative, irrational thinking and challenge them. So remember the automatic negative thoughts that we talked about? Automatic negative thoughts, call them ant. These ants, they need to be identified. They need to be analyzed as irrational, deemed irrational. Then they need to be changed. And that's a process. They learn how to do that. And as simple as logging. When did I feel down today? And what happened that led me to feel down? And then what thoughts were in my mind when I felt down? And what is an alternative thought? So I take those thoughts first and I analyze them. Do I actually believe it? And you find people say, when they look at themselves, no, I believe in the thought like 80%. Oh, so you don't believe in it 100%. What's the 20%? And you enlarge the 20%. Then they begin to look at, oh, yeah, I really don't see, I said 80, but to be honest to God, this is like a 50-50. They went from 80 to 50 just by you enlarging their 20% or 10% or 1%. So CBT, how is the system serving the symptom serving the system, as I mentioned to you, and provide community support. This is where, as a church, we have a role. Community support. Do we prepare our young youth to be helpers to others? How do we change our ministries to be welcoming and inviting and connecting and non-judgmental? How do we as servants understand that my role is not to show up on Friday, give a lesson, and go home? Then my role is actually beyond. If I remove Friday completely out, my role is huge. Is to outreach, is to visit, is to go out with the youth, is to open up with them so that they have a chance to talk and bring some of the pressures out instead of these pressures accumulating on their heads from everywhere. I am that release valve for them where they can actually release and talk and open up and feel better and feel like someone cares about me and so on. This is the life of the servant, not a lesson and showing up on a Friday night. So steps to help: encourage physical activity. That's, if someone is depressed, physical activity is helpful because again, when you're physically active, your cortisol level is down, it gets reduced. Cortisol is not good. Cortisol, when it increases, it has obviously the benefit, it's not God created it for no reason, it has the benefit to prepare you for something bad or something not so good. But when you're chronically under that feeling, it hurts your cells. And that's why you see people who are under many under a while of stress, they can develop diabetes, because again, these hormones actually do physical damage and also mental damage. Identify recruitments to depression. So what recruits that person to being depressed? The youth. And I tell you, when I go to school and I see these people, I feel so bad because they remind me of the time when they bullied me. When I sit home and my mom keeps questioning me or keeps telling me this, I feel like I'm called to be depressed. So there are things that they can begin to think of that recruits them to depression. When to refer. Recommending the involvement of a physician or a psychiatrist in cases where the adolescent has not consulted medical assessment. So in most cases, when someone comes and I feel like from talking to them, they're down, depressed, have you seen your physician? Have you seen your doctor? So it's important to do that. But I don't want to give my child medication. We're not talking medication yet. Just take your child to a physician. Let them get assessed. Well, my physician is not really very good. Okay, well, refer them out. There's so many obstacles we put before the treatment of people and before caring for them. Some of it has to do with stigma. Oh, depression. Oh, especially about pharmacists. Any pharmacists here? No? غريبة مفيش pharmacist. حاجة عجيبة. Said, no, I don't like these drugs. They're not good. Well, I know they're not good drugs, but all drugs are not good drugs. Even your Tylenol is not a good drug. But here, those are long. People who take them, they don't get off them. First of all, that's not true. There are drugs that you can take off, taper down eventually. But you'd rather be dysfunctional than being on a medication that can help you organize your life better and do well. It's stigma. Stigma. It's a very big stigma. When physical symptoms are present or when depression is negatively affecting aspects of life, you have to refer. If symptoms are worsening, so despite the fact that you're trying to help them, and over the course of this last 7 months or 8 months, they're getting worse. They need to see somebody, and they're having difficulty managing despite regular counseling. Then maybe they need actually what we call psychopharmacology. So they need some sort of medicine that impacts their psychological mental health. Okay, 5 minutes break. So 5:12. So we'll resume. We'll close بقى with suicidal ideation, assessment, and management. Anxiety is very similar, but it's not exactly similar to depression. But in your book, you'll find a good section on anxiety. I might just take a suicidal ideation. Very good. This way, we'll be done. Oh, yeah. Okay. Um, Show of hands. Suicide is wrong. Who agrees? Okay. One person, two. People have a right to suicide. If you agree, obviously put your hand up from now on. Persons who die by suicide are responsible for their actions. Two. There are limits to what I would do to prevent suicide. As a servant counsel, there are limits to what I would do to prevent suicide. Huh? Would. Persons thinking about suicide also have reasons for living. This is unanimous agreement on this one. People serious about suicide cannot be helped. Our community can work together to prevent suicide. Our community. Our community. Oh. I have failed if a person I am helping dies by suicide. I will be ashamed if someone I am close to dies by suicide. Anyone can be at risk of suicide. The burden of suicide. Okay. No one calls a death by suicide a successful suicide. Huh? So yeah, no one calls a death by suicide a successful suicide. No one calls it like that. Everyone is willing to do something to help prevent suicide. To some extent, okay. Keeping someone safe is more important than fears of getting involved. There is help for me as I help others keep safe. Okay. Helping others to avoid suicide. Okay. People thinking about suicide find ways to invite help. Some believe yes, maybe. Okay. Most people considering suicide want to live. Maybe. Okay. Persons at risk of suicide can be understood. I can understand a person at risk of suicide. I can assess someone and say yes. Okay. Anyone talking about suicide is taken seriously. You agree? You agree? You agree? You're on the border and you don't agree. Okay. Unfortunately, not everyone who talks about suicide is taken seriously. Some people are saying, stop playing with it. Stop trying to grab attention. I feel ready, willing, and able to help someone avoid suicide. Okay? My assistance can help save a life. Okay. Just to get us talking a little bit about suicides, and let's see what we learned from the actual presentation. Both the presentation on depression and suicide, I Explore attitudes and hopes. We just did. Just a general idea. Most people experience suicidal thoughts from time to time. Most people. There's a common saying in Egyptian homes, يا رب خدني. It's in Arabic. أو إيه؟ أنا هموت نفسي. طبعا ما حدش. It's just a common. It's a common saying, but this is how close we actually use the language of suicide. Uh, from time to time, particularly in reaction to losses or setbacks in life. Suicidal ideation alone may not indicate that a person is acutely suicidal. So just to have thoughts of, I want to end my life, thoughts, doesn't mean the person is acutely, means immediately suicide. Suicide is not about death, believe it or not. Suicide is about ending the pain. And so, if a person can learn a better way, a different way of ending their pain, they'll take So 80% of youth do not die in their first attempts of suicide. So talking to a person about suicide will not make them try it. So sometimes you hear this comment, so if I'm sitting with someone and I'm kind of thinking maybe they're suicidal, if I were to ask, are you suicidal? Am I actually pushing the thought into their mind? The answer is no, absolutely not. Okay? On the contrary, naming the word suicide when you think for the person, because now they can speak about it and know that maybe they can get some help. Because I'm playing with my, that's why it's serious. No, no, we'll stop playing. If you're suspecting it, yes, you say, are you thinking of killing yourself? Or are you thinking of suicide? Yeah, bluntly. People who threaten to commit suicide mean what they say. So we're not talking about, I'm going to kill myself. No, but when people say, I'm thinking, I want to end this life, they're serious. And someone in a rage could do something they can regret, of course. People who attempt suicide do not want to die, but to pretty much put an end to their pain, yes. In almost every case, a person considering suicide would choose to live if they could find another solution to end the pain. Good news. A non-lethal attempt, so an attempt that doesn't end up killing the person, is not just looking for attention. You don't. So you try again and maybe thinking you're not, but you end up dying. Like especially with pills or cutting, they got me this time. But and then some people actually, because they've tried it, they come closer to experiencing that internal feeling of what did I just do to myself? I'm gonna die. So they become more familiar with the experience. And some people, when they try to cut, they don't die, they hang themselves. And some people, when they hang themselves, they don't do it properly. They don't do it properly in the sense that it doesn't kill them, but they end up with deformities or they could end up paralyzed for life. And so now their pain, at least in this world, there is definitely, I tell people, when your faith says, you know, be careful, committing suicide is not going to take you to heaven, obviously, unless a person is sick, ill, out of depression, clinical depression, they've committed suicide. No, the God's mercy is unlimited, but or is huge, is big. But we're talking about um, the problems that can accumulate when they attempt and it doesn't work here on earth. The problems they can be facing, such as paralysis and so on. An attempt is a cry for help. About 80% of lethal suicides follow an earlier attempt. Those are stats, yeah. Ignoring painful feelings will not make them go away. So we tell people, don't ignore your feelings. Let's talk about them. Let's process your feelings. And that's where a servant can be very instrumental in discussing and talking and opening up their youth and trying to help them deal with those feelings and so on. Bottling up versus learning to express emotions. Again, in some societies, some families, not just societies or communities, some families, we don't express our feelings. And boys, you don't express your feelings. You keep them in, you deal with them on the inside. Well, guess what? Your system is not going to deal with them at one point. It will break, and then it becomes very painful. Why does a yes answer? So here is where this is helping you assess what's going on. A yes answer to each question will set off an alarm, like a risk alert. It's called CPR for short. Current factors. Current suicide plan, yes or no? Do you have a plan? No. I never thought of it. Okay. Oh, yes, I do. What's the plan? Well, I have these bottles from my parents. They used them when my mom was depressed, or then, and I have about 100 of them. Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, 15 of them will kill you. So, pain. Do you have pain that at times feels unbearable? A yes to that will set off a risk alert. Resources. Do you feel you have few, if any, resources? Yes, I have no one to talk to. No one really asks about me. My parents are divorced. I'm in a foster home. My foster parents don't really care. They have no resource, almost zero resource. So any yes to the three, or yes to all three, then you know your risk, or the risk goes up. Support system, resources, people you can go to. Why does a yes answer to each question here set off a risk alert? This one is background factors. Did you have a prior suicidal behavior? A yes here increases your risk. Do you have someone in the family who attempted or committed suicide? A yes there is a risk. Are you receiving any, or have you received mental health care? Again, if you're depressed, if you're mentally not doing well, then again, this increases your risk. So intervention and management. Three parts. This is called the assist way. Then you understand what's going on, and then you assist. And you can look them up. Assist, it's called Assist Suicide Intervention Model, and you can click on that link. You could actually be trained online if you want to be certified. Responding to each risk alert. So if look at the bottom, if someone is vulnerable, you link them to health worker. If suicide you disable the plan. You try and work on disabling. You try and work on disabling, because if someone is determined to commit suicide, they'll do it. So in that sense, yes, you can help, but you also have a limit, because the person can really fool you. And a lot of the people who want to commit suicide, they actually reach a point where they make sure everyone around them feels things are gone better, and everything is okay, and then they do it. And they have it planned months and months ahead. And if they're actually suicidal at that time, you keep them safe, you try and contract a safety plan. I don't like the contract per se, but you'd like to get them like on a not sort of a commitment. It's a commitment for a plan of action. So they commit to the process, not commit to I won't do suicide. That was used to be the old way. Now you get them committed to the process of healing or treatment. Okay, and I'll explain the difference in a second. And seek assistance, of course. So stage model assists. Stage one, connecting. So sense of acceptance, not judgmental, supportive. You explores the signs that suicide is connected to current life events. Confirm suicide is present or not. As I said, you can say, okay, if you're doubting, you say, are you suicidal? Are you getting suicidal ideation? Are you thinking of killing yourself? You don't have to ask all the questions, but one of them. And show you are ready and able to help prevent it or help connect them with someone who can help them. For me, what triggers it? So someone who says, for example, I don't see any meaning to this life. This life is like, I hate it. I wish I wasn't here. So they throw you stuff. Like sometimes, and sometimes people will say it bluntly, I actually get a lot of thoughts to end my life. So they've told you, they've said that this is suicidal ideation. Ideas of suicide. Stage two, understand. So let's develop a mutual understanding for reasons of dying. What makes you want to end your life? Show respect for the person at risk through willingness to listen and establish a life side foundation. So something like, I understand now, I understand better how and when and what makes you think about suicide and what you've done. Now, you're still alive. Can you help me understand what's making you alive? And here I begin to open up the door for a life story, not a death story. So they begin, some people say, well, I don't want to go to hell. If they're religious, they say, or Christian, believe, they say, I don't want to go to hell. I say, okay, so your faith says something about this. Even I'm Christian and I'm a priest. And in front of me is a Coptic Orthodox youth. I ask the question, so your faith tells you, what do you mean your faith? Yeah, I mean your faith. You're the one who's telling me I don't want to go to hell. So your faith tells you don't want to, like this will take you to hell. Tell me more. Curiosity is very good in counseling, because you want to learn how they're thinking. And then you enlarge it even further and say, what else? Well, I know my uncle will be very distraught because he also lost his son or daughter this way, and my mom, I imagine her or my dad at my tomb, at like my burial, and how they will feel, and that makes me not want to do this. And then they come up, they give you a list of things, and sometimes they give you only one thing. But stay with it. Don't feel like you're rushed. Stay with it. What else? And then put it back to them. So what you're telling me is keeping you alive is your faith. And specifically about your faith is this belief that if you commit suicide, then you will go to hell. And I guess you're saying going to hell is not the ideal thing for you. Why? It's a stupid question, but it's not stupid. It's like, why? Well, because I'm going to be in more, and I'm going to be in pain, more pain. So it's more pain, and they want to commit suicide to end the pain. So there's that goes on when you ask these questions. It's why? Why not go to hell? Well, because I don't want to lose my eternity. I want to be good. I want to live a good life in heaven. I don't want to eternally die and burn and have more pain. my parents, my this, my that, my little sister, my little brother is, who knows what's going to happen to them, and I don't want to hurt them. And so they can tell you and enlarge the life-based story. Then you assist. Here, they used to ask for contract safety plan, and sometimes there is space for that, where you say, okay, so I want you to tell me when those thoughts are going to come to you, what are you going to do? So far you told me, this is what's leading me to think about suicide. This is why have not committed it yet. When the thought comes to you, what are you going to do? How will you enlarge the life story and control the death story? And they say, okay, well, maybe I can call you. Oh, that would be great. But what if you call me and I'm not reachable? What are you going to do? So, well, maybe I can go out with my friends. Maybe that would be first. I call a friend and go out just to distract the thoughts. Maybe I can remind myself of why I'm alive. Why do I continue on? What is good happening in my life? Maybe I can remind myself of how I've overcome pain before in my life. And I can gain more confidence in my mind that I could do this. It's okay. Or maybe I can remind myself what my parents would look like if I do this. And so whatever. And then they say, or maybe I can just go to my therapist, call my therapist. If they haven't seen a therapist, you can, one of the things that you can say, you've got to see a therapist about this. Have you told your parents? Well, no, or yes, but my parents don't take me seriously. Okay, do you mind if when you feel comfortable, you and I can come and visit and sit down and talk to your parents, or try and understand what's going on from their perspective. Again, you may be able to do that as servant, or you may defer that to the priest, where a community would rather speak with a buna or a priest than speak to someone, let's say, who's the best friend to their father. But sometimes that can work for you. You will know. You will know. And so you can contract that. They say, okay, I contract. And then if the thought is still persistent despite you've done A, B, and C, what are you gonna do? You gotta reach a point with them where you actually make the suggestion, and not a suggestion, but actually tell them. You call either mobile uh, crisis of appeal, mobile crisis of appeal. These people you can call and wait online for 15-20 minutes. No one will answer you, and you got to tell them, if you call and you don't get an answer, they try their best. Their mobile crisis of appeal, and in Halton they have mobile crisis of Halton, and so on. And but sometimes you can get through because they are mobile. They actually come to where you are to help you, take you to the hospital, do whatever. Yan kasi can call 911. And 911, again, you may wait 10-15 minutes on the phone. You know that's what's happening with 911 nowadays. Have you called 911 recently? Inshallah, you don't have to. So if you call 911, you could be put on hold for 10 minutes until someone answers you. And then they ask you the usual question: police, ambulance, or fire truck? Shucks. If you tell them ambulance, or you say police, or you say whatever, they transfer you over. And if there's someone answers you right away there, they say, are you breathing? Are you conscious? Okay, if you're breathing and you're conscious, uh, you're in the queue. Okay, but if someone says, I'm suicidal and I'm thinking of taking my life and I'm not able to control my thoughts, I need help, they'll send someone right away. No, you're not with them when these thoughts come. So you let them, they do A to stop the thought. They do, A doesn't work, they do B. They do C. They do A, B, and C together to push the thought. Still doesn't work. D doesn't work. A part of that list has to be calling someone. And if they don't reach you or don't reach so-and-so, mom and dad or so-and-so, they reach mobile crisis of appeal, and you can give them the number and make sure they put it on their phone. And 911, that they're ready to call 911. And then you ask them, do you contract? you give me your word that you will do this. This is the old style contract. And a better way is to say, so are you committed to the process here? Are you committed to the treatment, to this idea? Will you commit to speaking to a therapist and commit to this idea? Can you commit to this process? This is better than, are you committed to the contract? Because sometimes, are you committed to the contract? Yeah, I'm committed to the contract, but they're not committed to anything. Or they feel like they need to commit because of you, but they don't really commit. But if they commit to the process, they understand it's a process. They're more willing to go through the process than just commit to this. That's what the research has found. That's why now there's a shift away from contract to process. This is something that they give. It's a small little leaflet that Assist program gives, and it just reminds you of connect, understand, assist. And in each one, it tells you, in connect, you explore, you ask. Here you're talking about death, past, feeling alone. Understand, it's a different verb and a different goal. Assist, same thing. And this is the one, a copy of it. I don't think I have a big one here to show you. I wanted to put it out there. When you go online, you'll see it. It's just a card that you keep with yourself, just to remind yourself of the step. Once you do it a few times, it's straight in. And whenever you feel like you're sat with someone and you're not comfortable, where you actually believe that this person is going to do something, you don't say, okay, we'll see you next Friday. No, you got to do something that same night, immediately. Talk to another servant, talk to the coordinator, talk to Abuna. You cannot just leave someone like that at all. And I've seen people in the church take the person to the emerge. And sometimes, you would do that. You say, come, I'll take you to the emergency. Let's talk to them. Let's see what they can help you with. And sometimes they let them sleep overnight in the psychiatric ward. Sometimes they sleep for the week. It depends on how bad it is. And sometimes they just send them home. They do the assessment. They get them to speak to a psychiatrist, but they open up the door to get a specialist right away, which is a good thing. Any questions? So I gave you the 3 yeses and the 3 yeses, and I gave you that sheet where I started from the bottom going up. Right? So if they tell you, some people, a lot of people will say, it's not like I'm gonna do it. I'm scared. I don't think I'll do it. I just feel like that. And say, okay, well, let's talk about the feeling. So you know that this person is not at high risk. They're just feeling it, but you got to talk to them and get them the help they need. And versus someone who is brought to you by their friends. Mina, please talk to so and so. He's very disturbed, and you talk to them and say, and they're not talking much. They're just very little words, and they're very down. Their eyes are closed, and they say, thinking of suicide, you're thinking of killing yourself. So you say, I want to end this. Don't assume anything. You got to ask the question. And when you do, and he says, yes, say, do you have a plan? Yeah. I've been contemplating this. I've been searching that. I have pills. And then you go through the whole thing. And when that's a yes, and another one is a yes, and another one is a yes, then now one yes is good enough. But if you start having more than one yeses to any of those 2 slides that I gave you, like the CPR and the current situation in the background, then yes, you say no. Okay, let's go talk to someone. Oh no. But usually you need an assistant. You need someone to help you out. You as a servant need someone to back. This is very It actually is very draining when you're sitting with thinking is suicide. Very draining. I hope you benefited. And next time, Abuna Butros will be with you and we'll do the assessments. So try and finish the readings. After this course, you're off to the group, and that's it. And for those who haven't done the previous courses, we'll get them done. Yeah, you will join. It's an ongoing, yeah, for you, ongoing. You'll learn them either crash course or most like you will start in October. And just take. You missed 3 courses. Yeah. The group will, so after, according to the schedule, you'll see when the group will start and you'll come first meeting here. You'll meet with Arsani. Arsani is the instructor of the group course and he will divide you. You were 6 people. I remember you were 6. Yeah, there's Andrew and Dave. So we've got to see if they're coming and committed. As you can tell, I only graduate people who finish. So if I get one person graduating, that's fine. But so that person learned something and is committed, that's fine. It's okay. Uh, this year we've started. We were like 19 people on the schedule, but not everyone could do it. لأن مين خلص الكتاب من زمان. It's an amazing book, actually. Sunday school بتاعنا كله مبني على البروتستانت بس with orthodox material. لكن الكونسبت نفسه amazing concept. The 9 steps دول very nice. You love them. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it's very actually helpful. احنا we changed our ministry to be small group ministry in parts of the ministries that we do because of this. This book has been with us for more than 15 years, Jan. But we find it very useful. It teaches well, and in the group you will be answering questions at the end of each chapter and submitting those. And you do them as in groups, so you're not doing it by yourself. You have help, and then as you do that, you actually culminate that learning by doing a presentation on your idea and project for either history or creating one from scratch. So all this will be given to you by Arsani. And once he meets with you the first time, he follows up with you virtually, and then he meets midway, and then he meets on the presentation. I meet as well. So him, myself, and one more, we come in and we do the evaluation. We evaluate your presentation and your idea. And so far, every single year, there was an idea that we took and implemented in the service. So you actually will see what you present can become very practical and valuable because we implemented. The practicum idea was one of the things that was presented in one of the years. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. The the group course. There was something sent. I can tell you what I have. Good question. YMCP. Are you on the YMCP class 2023? Have you been added? So yeah, that's the old one. Yeah, that's it. There's a newer edition, but that's the one I read. Yeah, this is very nice. There's a blue edition. Yeah. So what are we now? May what? May 7th, April 30th, that's today. May 7th is going to be the next, May 7th is your next class. And then you will be off Mother's Day, May 14th, and you will start Purpose Driven May 21st. And it should run, no? Yes, that's what I see here. I will definitely double check with Ayman, but May 21st, 28th, June 4th, June 11th, June 18th, June 25th, July 2nd, July 9th, and then the presentation. This is it's not a weekly course you come to, but you have that time to finish it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You will have to come the first time for sure. That's the kickoff. Yeah, and it's 3 to 4. It's a 1 hour. You will be submitting them online to Arseni, and then the presentation July 23rd from 3 to 6. We will have 3 presentations. If we have 3 groups, we'll have 3 presentations. 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes with comments and questions. I do a lot of questioning to the group. So the group, you must be very ready, because I take it as something I can actually use. I consider it extremely valuable. Just the process you thought about the youth ministry is to me extremely valuable. This answers the question? Yeah, let's pray together. Bless us, Lord, as we pray thankfully. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation. Deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Can you help me with this? Yeah. Mark. Mark, por favor. عندنا يجي